Welcome to another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast, the growth and development podcast. So, what's up? What's going on, Dr. Dave?
Oh, me, Dr. Dave, that's me. Hey, how you doing, Joe? How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I think you may be lagging a little bit, but we'll see how things go
I don't
on
know.
this
I, I
episode.
I I had my first cup of coffee in a week, and I'm really feeling its effects. I'm waking up really quick.
All right. Well, we'll get right to it. So, again, if you've been here before, you know how we do things. One of us will introduce a topic and the other one will get going. But in addition to that, I do want to welcome any new audience members if you're listening or viewing this episode for the first time. Thanks for tuning in. And for those returning, thanks for coming back. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So, today's topic, hopefully, we'll have a little fun with this. We're going to ask, is it really impossible? So,
Hmm.
Dave, I'm going to hand that off to you. Is it
Hmm.
really impossible? What are your thoughts on that? How do we get started with
I,
this?
I I think we have to think about this and address this from different perspectives. And of course, we're going to do the personal, professional side of things. But I think we might be able to have, like you said, have some fun and dig a little bit deeper. And I'm going to say, I think just from my experience and my observations throughout my career and working with my clients, there are a lot of things that seem impossible. And maybe some of them are technically impossible because, you know, people have limitations, whether it's time or capability or whatever. There's always some sort of um, outlying factor, I guess you could say, that could
Right,
make things impossible. Like, I don't know, light speed. We're just not quite there yet. It doesn't
right,
mean it's impossible. So I'm going to say it kind of depends a little bit, but I don't, honestly, I don't believe anything is impossible. And I say that
right,
because I wasn't the best high school student. I wasn't the
right,
most studious. I barely graduated high school. Thought I'd never get a college education. When I got out of the military the first time, I was thinking, oh, I want to go back in, but I'll never get back in. I wound up being able to get back in and serve a total of 3 times on 3 different occasions. Didn't
right,
think I'd get my bachelor's degree, didn't think I'd get my master's, let alone a doctorate. You know, the American dream, having, the items, the materialistic things, the house, the cars, the friends, the network, a lot of things I didn't believe were possible. And I think that's where we kind of buy into social norms or what we've been told over and over and over, and we
right,
buy into that perception that we buy into the perception of what people's perception of us is,
right. Yep.
and when I stopped, I'm not going to say I stopped listening to people, I stopped listening to the naysayers, and I started thinking about what have we done as a global society. We look at the pyramids. Oh, that's impossible. We still haven't figured that one out totally.
Right, right,
We look at flying. Granted, we don't
right.
have
Yep.
wings, but yet we still fly.
Right,
Um, we think about reaching the sun. Well, theoretically, and maybe we try to reach the sun, but we know things melt the closer they get.
right,
So, what about that? Putting objects in space. We've done that. All these
right,
things we thought were impossible. Send someone to the atmosphere and have them return in the same condition that they left. All these things were thought impossible at some time, and I question, why did we think it was impossible? What was driving that perception of impossibility? And
right,
yet, as much as it was driven that that's impossible, we were able to achieve these things, either individually or collectively. We were able to achieve great things. There's been many inventions out there that have been patented that were perceived as impossible
right. Yep.
for so long. So when we start turning this back and thinking about ourselves, thinking that school or education is impossible, or getting a job at some company, or whatever, writing a book for us. I thought writing a book was just a fantasy for me at one point in my life.
Right. Yep.
And having a podcast, and you know teaching college, that was a dream. I'm like, wow, I could never teach college because I don't have these things. And yet
Right.
here we are, you and I today. We've accomplished what we thought was impossible at one point, and we're still
Right.
conquering things today that we think are impossible. How do we take things to the next level? Is it impossible? No, we just haven't. I'm going to say no, it's not impossible. We just haven't figured it out yet.
Right.
So I'm going to pause there because I think I've given us a lot to chew on.
Yeah, absolutely. You did. You opened a lot of those doors to the uncertainties, and like you say, what we thought in the past were things that were impossible. But
Mhm.
yeah, you introduced a lot of different things. So I don't even know where to start, but I guess I'll start with just
Start where you want.
I think it goes back to one of the things you did say is really other people's perception of in our case anyway, if
Mhm.
we look at it individually, other people's perception of what we're capable of doing. So if
Mhm.
we again we think about, like you said, I didn't know that I could be a doctor. I didn't know I could be an author, business owner, a college professor, all those things that, like you said, I didn't know I was able to do those things. It wasn't until, and we've said this now so many times on our different episodes, open a, it wasn't until I opened my mind to the possibilities,
Yeah.
right? And so kind of changing that mindset of, okay, I don't see it, I don't
Absolutely. And I love it
understand
when
it.
you're changing your mindset. That's really, that's a big piece.
Absolutely, because we could have gone along with the norms and what people
Mhm.
assumed we would achieve or do, and continue down that path of, oh, that's impossible, you can't do that. And it
You're
wasn't
not smart
until,
enough. You're not
right,
this enough.
yeah,
You're not
just
that enough. There's always some reason why we couldn't do
absolutely.
something.
Absolutely.
Or
And so
excuse.
in some cases, that was actually the fuel for me, because
Mhm.
I started to, question that. How can they
Absolutely.
say that it's impossible? It's just because they can't see it. And that's why I said that's why it's so
Or they
important
couldn't
to,
see you or I doing it. They could see
or
other people
even,
doing it.
or they couldn't see themselves doing it. So they
Right, right.
definitely couldn't see someone else doing it.
Mhm.
I think a lot of our assumptions and things we make about other people is based on our experiences or what we think we're capable of. So we're just thinking in that our mind that I can't accomplish that. How can they accomplish that? Because of,
Mhm.
again, assuming their journey or path, they're only basing it on what they know. So again, that's why not knowing what other people are capable of or knowing their journey is going to give you those biases or put that in your mind that that person, there's no way they could do it,
Mhm.
because again, all they have to base that on is their assumptions and their own bias, unconscious bias of what they believe you're capable of. So
Yeah.
to overcome that, that's where I think it started with me.
Mhm.
Just realizing that nobody else can control my destiny. Again, we've already talked about that in the past. You have to define that for yourself. And I think when you get to that point where you can define what success means to you, then you do start to see the possibilities. That they are endless, and a lot of times the only thing that limits you or prevents you from getting there is yourself.
Mhm.
Because if you want it, if you can dream it, if you can visualize it, typically you can get there.
Yeah.
Again, that's how all these things, all the inventions, all the new innovative things that are happening is because people visualize something that doesn't exist today, and then
Mhm.
they figure out how to get there. So
Mhm.
that's, again, that's just one side of this or one piece of this topic that we're talking about, because it is could be quite lengthy, and we could probably spend a lot more than just 30
Oh,
minutes or
I'm
an
sure you and
hour
I
on
could,
this.
yeah, you and I could talk about this for probably a good week straight.
Yeah, so when I think in terms of the personal side of it, I really think of, we limit ourselves typically based on someone else's assumption of what you can achieve, and so to get to a point like we said mainly in recent episodes, is just opening our mind to the possibilities. Then we do look beyond what those current limitations are, and,
Mhm.
and it then it's not impossible anymore,
Yeah.
because we're
And I think
really,
another piece of this is the insecurities that we have as we've grown up and matured, and we're able to remove some of those insecurities.
yeah,
We've
again, it
worked
goes
on, because when you think about, is it really impossible? Well, that person's a doctor. I could never do that because of
right.
XYZ, because of how I've been brought up or how I've been trained or how I've been told I need to live my life, or the limitations of my life because of the way I was brought up. And we can actually undo that,
Right,
for
absolutely.
our new listeners and viewers. Joe and I didn't have we weren't privileged when we grew up. We didn't have we didn't have a silver spoon in our mouth, if you will. We had humble beginnings, and yet we were able to overcome those, and I guess for the lack of better phrasing, overcome our our programming that we are programmed with
Right.
with the
Right.
society and the cultures and the dynamics that we grew up with. you know our life experiences being in the military or having certain jobs and levels of responsibility, we are able to reflect and realize, hey, this is how far I really have come. If I can do that, then I can do this, and if I can do this, then I can do that. And it really does help you start realizing that it's things are not impossible. It's just how much effort and focus do you want to put into it. It may
Yeah.
mean that it may take you a much longer time to do something, but if you really want it, you can do it.
Right. Right. Well, and based on that too, um, you said something that again we touched on in the past. Compiling those experiences or past experiences that you've had to get you to another place
Mm-hmm.
instead of, okay, I've learned these things, I'm going to disregard all those things and move to the next thing. No, it's a combination or accumulation of experiences, learnings, and that's how you get to the next thing. And that's why it's so important. If you think about your team environment, the expectation is not that you know everything about whatever the project is, but you have enough team members that are going to complement one another to get
Mm-hmm.
the job done. And that's very similar to, again, your experiences, all the things that you bring to the table, your education, your background, all those things are relevant to you getting to the next level or to
Mm-hmm.
whatever that thing that you thought was impossible. Like Dave just said, we've overcome a lot of things in our lives. We kind of set that norm or the whispering in our head about what we couldn't do. You're not supposed to do those things,
Right, right,
but
right.
breaking through those things and not really paying attention to it. Okay, they're in
Mm-hmm.
our ears, but why are you seeing it as impossible? Why can't I try to push beyond that to see if it's possible? And
Mm-hmm.
then we realize we push through that and we're like, okay, why was it impossible? So that's the power in really taking a look at yourself and again looking at all those things that you've overcome in the past, because
Mm-hmm.
typically when we get to a new thing, new organization, new position, we think of, okay, am I going to be able to do the thing that I said I could do,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then if we
Or am I
reflect back,
overconfident about the thing I thought I could do?
exactly, and that's when you go back to, well, when I got to that last position or that last um, job that I was in, I didn't know everything about that job, and
Mm-hmm.
look what happened. So again, I think if we take the time to reflect on the things that we've achieved in those recent years or in the past that we didn't think at the time we were going to be able to do, and then
Yeah.
again you walk away from that, you're thinking, oh wow, I did it. I was able to master this. I was able to get to this level with that particular thing. So I
I
think
liked
it,
what you were saying earlier. I'm going to interject. I liked what you were saying earlier about really thinking about what we did and how we were able to overcome it. And we talk about this a lot offline, and that's focus and consistency.
right. Yep.
Focus and consistency, and that's what's going to get you through it. And I'm going to go back to one of the examples I provided and probably a handful of other episodes, and that is when I was in high school, I didn't do good at math. It's not that I couldn't do well in it. I just young, dumb, and stupid, I guess. I just chose not lazy. Maybe it was lazy. You know, I just didn't want to do it.
Right.
So I didn't think I could do it because my grades weren't good because I wasn't focused and committed to learning that. So as I
Right.
got older, I thought I wasn't good at math. So when I went to college, that was for my bachelor's degree. That was the last 2 semesters I took was college math, and I was so afraid of it because I didn't think I could do it that I tried to test out of it. So I focused and was consistent every day for 3 months and went through that college textbook. And when I tried to test out of it, I missed it by 2 or 3 points. And I
Right.
was
Right.
frustrated until a colleague of mine said, but you do realize you just taught yourself college math.
Right. Right.
And that was one of those tipping points or aha moments in my career that it's not that I'm not good at math. I'm good at math. I just chose not to focus and be consistent about that focus. So,
Right.
to your point, what is it that's preventing us? What in our own head is telling us we can't do it? I've met a lot of people with all sorts of limitations, and they've done things that I was like, wow, how did you do that? How did you overcome those limitations? And a lot of it is focus and consistency.
Right, right,
Just staying the course, like we've said in other episodes, and not necessarily buying into the cultural norms and perceptions of people. Well, you're this, so that means you're that. You don't know unless you start talking to those people, and
right.
understanding where they've come from and their journeys, because as
It,
similar
it,
as our journeys are, they're very distinct and very different. And that's what I love
absolutely.
about our conversations every week, because every week we learn something about each other and about this process and our journeys.
Well, and that was kind of what I was referring to, previously in the conversation about, we assume we know about people based on, again, what we can see or
Mm-hmm.
the little bits we know about them. But it's not until you have a, really deep conversation with them that you learn about some of the experiences they have. And, maybe they, in your eyes, they may come off as arrogant
Mm-hmm.
or know it all. But then after you talk to them, you're like, oh, wow, now I get it. I see why
Right,
you're so
right. Now I
confident
get it.
in
Yep.
that. And that's sometimes what it takes. So that's why, we talked about this in the past too, is telling your story whenever you get a chance, so that
Mm-hmm.
people, and don't just walk in the room and say, hey, look at me, I'm Dr. Hamlet, I've done this and that.
Mm-hmm.
But when you really get to the point where you're, establishing those relationship with people that matter to you, then it's important that you let them know, so that I think another piece of this, and you kind of touched on it with your colleague, after you taught yourself math, and he came back and said, hey, you do realize that you taught yourself college math. That's also very important, because if we stay around that group that's always naysayers and, always thinking of the doom and gloom,
Mm-hmm.
you become, you start
You
to
start believing it.
assimilate to that,
Yeah.
and you believe that. So if that's happening with you, maybe you step into an arena or, closer group of friends that are more positive,
Mm-hmm.
like the one that was encouraging to you. Again, that helps to minimize some of that negative thought or some of that, those biases that people have against you, or for whatever reason. Then that starts to kind of minimize that, and you can start to really open your eyes to see the possibilities. But when you're
Mm-hmm.
in that environment where people are constantly saying, oh, you can't do that, nobody's ever done that,
Mm-hmm.
then sometimes you start to believe it, especially if you
Yeah.
start to try to achieve it. You start having maybe some setbacks or some failures in
Mm-hmm.
that process. It's a little bit easier probably to back off of it, versus if you have kind of a cheering squad or
Right, right, right.
supportive group that are saying, hey, step, pick yourself back up and let's keep going. Let's see
Yeah.
what's next. And so that could also change that dynamic of why we think things are impossible. If
Yeah.
we're hanging in that group that woe is me all the time, that's what you again going to
Yeah.
assimilate to be closer to, versus that group that's saying, if you see it, you can achieve it. And that has a different connotation, again, and that drive for you to want to continue to do
And this
something.
gets to that self-awareness that you mentioned earlier. If you really want something, if you really, really want something, you'll find a way to do it. It's not
Right,
impossible, because
right,
you will find a way. Like, I'd like to be an attorney. I'd like to be a physician, not just a doctor, but a physician. And
right.
but how bad do I really want it? Do I
Yep,
really want to put in the time and effort to get, that level of education and experience at this point in my career? And I'm not saying it's too late. It's not too late, but is it what I really want now? Is that really what I want to achieve? And those are not things that I want to achieve. Those are things that I think would be cool to achieve.
right,
But what
right,
I really want to achieve is something different. And
right.
that something different, I'm totally focused on, and I'm committed to, and I'm consistent with it, just like you are with the things that you are really wanting. If you want something bad enough, you will find a way to do it. And we
Yep,
talk to people almost every
absolutely.
day about this on a variety of teams and clients. It's like, if you want an education, you can get it. If you want certification, you can get it. If you
Right,
want to move to this place or that place, you can do it. You can achieve it.
absolutely.
You want to visit another country, you want to get a different type of job, move into a different career, stay at home more and spend more time with your family. You can do it.
Yep,
You just got to focus and commit and be consistent about that approach. Because to me, I guess it's kind of like I guess the easiest way I can assimilate it in my head is it's like going to college or going to school, because we've all gone to school at some point in our lives, hopefully, and saying, well, in order to pass this class, I have to do these certain things and have it turned in by this time and achieve this sort of score or grade to keep going. If I don't do these assignments, I'm still back here. I'm not up here, or I'm still back here and not up here if you're for the viewers trying to do left to right, right to left. Um, so you need to understand what that looks like for yourself, because to your point, if you can visualize it, you can achieve it, but you got to
Absolutely.
really want it. You can't just go at it half-assed. You have to be all in. Whether it's you wade into the water from the shallow end and swim out to the deep, that's one way of doing it, or you can get up on that high dive and just jump straight into the deep end and start
Absolutely.
swimming. So,
Yeah.
but either way, you're doing it. You've made that commitment to go into that water, into that unknown, and that's really what it boils down to, is believing in yourself, being committed, and realizing nothing is impossible. Everything is possible. It's just, have you prepared correctly? Have you done
Right.
everything you needed to do to achieve what others perceive as impossible? Because if you
Right.
perceive that it is possible, then it is possible. It doesn't matter what other people think. It just may take you longer. It may take you shorter because you are on your own, and maybe you're being bogged down by other people's perceptions. I mean, that's how
Yep.
some people invent things or find
Absolutely.
find solutions. They finally just buckle down and they just go into it and just that's what they do.
Absolutely. And you touched on, again, the self reflection piece, knowing where you are today, and then visualizing where you'd like to go. And
Hmm.
then the third step of that is just figuring out how you're going to get there.
Hmm.
But also, uh, I said this, I think, at the very beginning, defining what success means to you.
Absolutely. You're
Again,
right. You're
because
right about that.
we talk about the journey, and a lot of times we look at other people and think, oh wow, they're successful, they must have had an easy road, but
Hmm.
that's typically not the case, but
No.
that's all we can see.
Hmm.
Again, it's our
Yeah, it's like all those things
perception.
that you see online. It's like people see the success point and go, "Ooh,
Exactly, and don't
they can do it. I can't." But they don't see the journey that led
all
up
the
to it, and
stuff
all the ups and
underneath
downs,
that.
and the
Yep.
over and the other thing that I like that I've been seeing lately. It's it's not that failures are not failures. They're steps to success, because
Absolutely,
you
that's all
need those
part of it.
failures to learn how to be
Absolutely,
successful and achieve
you
those
have
things.
to,
Nothing
exactly.
is ever the first time. You never get everything right the first time. There's always been something that's helped lead you up to that point to where you can make it over that next bump, or that make it over
Right.
that next hill to keep going up.
And I think we talked about that in one of our early episodes about the failures are all part of that success, because like you
Mhm.
said, you try and do something that doesn't work, then you try something else, you add this to it, take away from it, until you reach that level of success that you just define for yourself. Again, this is
Mhm.
all about you, not about what other people's perception of success or what they think the level of success should be. But it, again, it's your interpretation of that. So I think that's very important, because a lot of times we do rely on other people's opinions and
Mhm.
their observations, their perceptions, which sometimes may be way
Very
beyond what you
way
were
and
even
way
thinking.
different. Yeah.
Exactly, or even way different, which
Mhm.
again, it's still not your idea. So just keep that in mind when you're trying to achieve something. In your eyes, you may have just climbed the mountain. In
Mhm.
other people's eyes, it may just be a stepping stone. So,
Yeah. Or maybe you stepped in the wrong direction and you need to reset. You know, it
but again,
happens.
it that should be based on your own
Right. Your own
idea
perceptions.
of what
Yeah.
that is, not someone else's. Because you, again, you may think you have just climbed the highest peak, and they may look at it as, wow, that's just a stepping
Yeah.
stone.
Yeah.
But
That's just a
again,
stepping
does
stone.
that really matter?
Yeah.
Your opinion, your perception of what you
Mhm.
just achieved matters more, because a lot of people, again, if they have not experienced all those things that you have to get to that point, to them it may not be much, it may not
Yeah.
mean anything to
Yeah.
them
They,
because
and
they
they may,
have no
their perception.
reference.
Yeah. They may be like, well, that's easy. I do that all the time.
Right, but in your eyes that may be your first attempt at it
Yeah.
or 10th
Or
attempt, and
vice
you've
versa.
achieved
This
it.
gets back to the strengths of the team and the people around you, because what you think is easy might be perceived as impossible by someone else.
Right.
So,
so it still comes back to your perception, your
mhm,
level of all those things that you determine, not someone else. Because again, you could be on a team, and you just said it, and one person could, see this as stars all the way up, and you're like, well, to me, that's not the same level of success.
right, right.
So it still comes down to your idea of what success looks like. I
Mhm,
mean, you may be in a team environment, it may be a team win, but in your eyes, that still may be small or
yeah.
maybe large. It just depends on your perception of what that means to you. And I
Mhm,
think that's the most important thing. If we want to overcome the impossible, or think, is it really impossible? Again, it's your perception of
yeah.
what possible is,
Yeah.
and you
And
can
if you think it's
overcome.
if you think it's impossible, then it is impossible because you're
Absolutely, that's
not
where I
going
was
to
going to
focus
say.
and commit and be consistent towards
Right.
making it possible. But to your point, basically getting rid of the noise in your head and just saying, this is possible. I'm going to figure out a way to make it happen. You've already taken that first step. Another one of our episodes, what's that first step look like? And that goes to show nothing is impossible. Is it impossible? No, it's not. It's just you haven't achieved, or you haven't committed enough, you haven't done enough. And if you think I've done everything I possibly can, that still doesn't mean it's impossible.
Right.
It
Right.
just means that you haven't gotten there yet. You may need a team, or maybe you need to just reflect a little bit more and figure it out, because there's
Right.
always a way. You know, space agencies have put people up into a space station and brought them back safely.
Right.
Impossible. Well, they've done it, supposedly, right? for,
Right.
for
Right.
for conspiracy theorists. But it's the things that we do today at some point were always thought impossible. And
Right.
now
Yep.
we're like, well, how did they build the pyramids? That's impossible that they could have done it. Well, it is possible. They did do it. Someone, somehow, some way did it. Just because we can't figure it out doesn't mean it's impossible. It is
Right.
possible. It has been done. We just haven't figured out how. So that's why I believe everything is possible. You just need to figure it out if you want to figure it out. And maybe you start pursuing the idea of trying to figure something out that you believe is possible, that others may think is impossible, and you realize maybe this just isn't what I want to do anymore. Maybe you don't want to put that much effort into saving the world, and all the fish and the animals in the world, and finding all the galaxies and that sort of thing. Maybe it's just you took that step, and that step is going to be used by someone else to get us to the next level, because everything is a progression. We didn't get here, we didn't solve the world's problems all on our own in one day.
Right.
Progression in our journey.
Well, I think that's an important piece, like you said, rather than try and reinvent the wheel and start from scratch, to rely on some of those resources that or sources that have already tried it. Maybe they may have tried it one way to that point, got to that level, but weren't able to achieve it. Maybe you apply more to it,
Mhm.
whatever that was, and now you get that much closer. So, and again, I'll go back to what I said before. Some of the experiences that we've already had, maybe it was in something totally different, but you're now able to apply that towards this new goal that
Mhm.
may seem impossible. So that's why it's important, again, to reach back and tap into those resources, those tools that you have available to you to get one step further. Again, you may not achieve whatever goal you're trying to achieve, but you may get closer, and then the
Mhm.
person behind you may be closer than that. So
Right.
um, again, you may go down this path and use those sources or resources that were available to you, but you realize, wow, I still can't do it. So like you said, you can commit to, okay, I'm going to continue to see how far I can get, or if I can get to that point, or I'm going to tap out. This is kind of my limit. I'm
Mhm.
going to stop. It still doesn't mean that it's impossible, but you've
Right,
reached a
right, right.
point where you're like, okay, I don't have I can't make the commitment that it
Yeah.
needs, so
And
I'm going to
sometimes the
walk away.
impossible does take a team. What's
Right, right,
perceived as
yeah,
impossible, we've mentioned this before in several episodes. Chances are you're not doing it alone. You just don't
right,
realize that you're not doing it alone.
yeah,
So, it looks like we're getting close. So,
yeah. So that's how I was going to go. See if you had any final thoughts on, is it really impossible?
Yeah, and I'm gonna conclude this with, is it really impossible? No, everything is possible. You just gotta commit, be consistent, and focus to it. That's all.
Okay.
I mean, it may seem oversimplified, but if we want to narrow it down into a nutshell, into a message, everything is possible. You just got to commit and focus and be consistent.
The only thing I'll add to it again is the fact that um, if you're going to say that it's impossible, or if you're going to, rely on someone else to say that it's impossible, then yeah, you're going to struggle. But if you define what success means to you, if you really take a look at what it takes to get there, and you're willing to commit, like Dave said, then the impossibility becomes possible. So we'll end it with that. But again, I thought this would be kind of fun, and I know this is a wide topic, but we try to narrow it into a few nuggets that you might be able to take away. So with that, again, you've been tuned into the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast. This is the growth and development podcast. So for anyone who is hoping to, grow in their personal development, their personal, professional, and career development, then this is the one-stop shop for you. So uh, if this is your first time, thanks for tuning in. Hopefully, you'll come back for more. Or if you're a long-time audience member, you've been already tuned into us, please share this with other people that you think might get something from this podcast. So,
Yeah. And
with
check out our
that,
new website. Check out our new
yeah,
website.
absolutely. I forgot to mention that, but yeah, check out our website again. All the you can access all the previous episodes, all the different platforms, and we got some new upcoming stuff we're excited about in the near future. So stay tuned. With that, we just want you to continue being your not so ordinary you.